Welcome back, and to those of you that are first joining us, welcome to our fifth session of the Stronger Combined Results Conference. The first, the only, the last Stronger Combined Results Conference. If you're just tuning in, this is a day-long conference devoted to Stronger Combined, which is a project that supports innovation in mobility in rural, small town, and tourist regions of the North Sea region of Europe. We have had 4 sessions today already, one related to technical solutions, where we saw the future, another related to bike sharing solutions, and a panel on bike sharing solutions and mobility hubs, where we invented the term sticky hubs, and interoperability and multimodal solutions in rural areas. Our fifth session will discuss the challenges related to the COVID-19 pandemic, which really needs no introduction. This is a reality we all lived through in the past 2 years, and to some extent continue to live through it. The project began about 1 year before COVID found its way to Europe. The pandemic had a dramatic impact on our lives, often in unpredictable, personal, and tragic ways. It also had a dramatic effect on this project. Virtually overnight, the idea of sitting with other people in the same space, in a train car, in a bus, in a rideshare, was a lethal threat to public health. Stronger Combined partner meetings were canceled. Some pilot projects were delayed, canceled, and completely reimagined, while others experienced relatively little inconvenience. This session will go in depth into how the COVID-19 pandemic influenced our mobility experiments. If you are in the audience today, either here in Gothenburg in Sweden or somewhere else in the universe, you can offer questions in our chat, and you can also participate in the Mentimeter questions. And that leads us to our first, we have 2 questions for this session. If you haven't joined us before, you can go use the QR code and enter this code, and it will bring you to this room. We have 2 questions. The first question is related to maybe the positive impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe something positive came out of it. So the question is, has COVID had any positive impact on delivery of mobility, such as new innovations? We have people responding already. We have 4 people saying yes. I sure would be interested to know what some of those are. But I don't think we have a follow-up question that actually asks people to specify. So we're just going to have to imagine what the positive impacts of COVID-19 is on mobility. But there are some people that said absolutely not. I can say for sure that the idea of working from home has become commonplace, and I think that even though it was kind of incubated in an unfortunate pandemic, it does make society resilient in a sense that should something like this happen again, or for whatever reason where we can't go to the office, many people at least are used to working from home. So to me, in my opinion, that's a pretty easy positive impact, one maybe silver lining to an otherwise very challenging time. We have another Menti question, which is, to what extent will people continue to work from home, at least partially, in the next 5 years? So what extent will people partially work from home? You can say less than today, more than today, or the same as today in the next 5 years. We have some answers coming in. We have the same as today is winning with 7. Can we catch up? Is there anyone else that's going to have less for today? Is there any for more for today? All right. Oh, same as today is pulling ahead. Anyone else? Okay, great. So no one ventures to imagine that it will be less or more. It's just going to be the same. We shall see. That brings us to our first speaker of this session. And if I could just pull my notes out. Our first presenter in this session is Dr. Stephen Sarasini, who is a senior researcher in the Mobility and Systems Department at RISE Research Institutes of Sweden. Stephen is among the top six researchers in mobility as a service in the world, and was among the authors to develop the oft-cited MaaS topology. Stephen is also a carpenter and builds elaborate wooden furniture and accessories. In fact, my parents have a set of Sarasini coasters at their home in Chicago. Stephen is also a gold medalist in go-karting. Stephen's presentation is related to the impact of COVID-19 on academic research. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, Robbie, for that very accurate introduction, especially when it comes to go-karting.
How does it feel to be the best go-karter?
I knew that would happen. I was so confident in my own ability and everyone else's lack of ability that, yes, it was inevitable.
Well, you're a true inspiration to us all.
Yes. I had also been to the track and practiced every night for the past 2 months in advance, in anticipation of this event. So
I think your hard work goes to show that where there is a will, there's a way.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see your presentation. Very curious to know how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted academic research.
Thank you very much, Robbie. So my name is Stephen Sarasini. I'm a researcher within RISE, colleague to Robbie, and I work mainly on mobility. So my presentation is really an overview of some of the challenges, responses, and implications to the COVID pandemic. Which camera is it? That one? Great. So here I'll present some statistics and hopefully plant a few ideas in your minds for the panel discussion a bit later on. So if we cast our minds back about 2.5 years, we were in the midst of the first lockdown in many countries across Europe and the world. And of course, when people are told to stay at home or work from home, then they don't travel so much. There was a steep decline in transportation across all modes, even more so in shared modes due to the hygiene factor or the risk of infection. Sweden, where we are currently located, is an exception in that we didn't have an official lockdown. We had advice to change our behavior. Notwithstanding, there was still a 50% decrease in public transportation in 2020 compared to a year earlier. And there was also a steep increase in private and individual modes. Among those, the private car. So to present some statistics here, you can see some modal statistics across 3 different regions. So Europe on the left, the US on the right, and the US in the middle and Japan on the right. If we just focus on Europe, then the top 2 lines, the dark blue and the slightly less dark blue, are the private car and public transportation. And you can see there as the first lockdown was sort of instituted, there was a sharp decline. And that levels of travel with those 2 modes have not really recovered to pre-COVID levels since then. Further down, you can see how walking has changed. And then at the bottom, you see some shared modes, which actually show signs of promise. This graph runs to October 21. For a more recent analysis, we can look at this, which shows public transport ridership per country in several European countries and also the US. And the United Kingdom is not currently a European country anymore. So if we start at the bottom there, you can see the United States and the United Kingdom have both suffered quite a lot. They have not recovered to pre-COVID levels of public transportation. Whereas at the top, you see France, Germany, and even Austria have actually superseded what they did previously. So this sounds promising. There's actually a strong reason or a set of strong reasons for this. So in France, they introduced a ban on air travel, domestic air travel, wherever there is a valid rail alternative, so you couldn't travel across France internally. And in Germany, there's a heavy subsidy for daily public transportation tickets, and that's partly to cope with the cost of living crisis since the other global event of the last 2 years, which is the war in Ukraine. So having said that, that public transport has recovered well in these two countries. It's mainly at the weekends, and it's seen more strongly in leisure trips rather than during the week trips, because people are working from home more often since the pandemic began. Another sort of more happy evolution since the pandemic is that people started to buy and use personal bicycles a lot more. So here you can see in blue is regular bikes, and in red is e-bikes. And it seems that until around about January of last year, regular bikes increased, sales of regular bikes increased quite steadily. It seems that these have been replaced by sales of e-bikes since then, which have continued to increase quite steadily. So it seems that people, in addition to working from home more often, are more interested in sort of active travel and health, which is also a good sign. What are the implications for other modes or combined modes, such as mobility as a service? So, as Robbie mentioned, I'm one of the top 6 researchers on this topic in the world. Thank you for that. And here I'm referring to MaaS in terms of level 2 and 3 mobility as a service. So, where you have a platform with multiple modes that you can combine and book and pay for, or the so-called level 3 MaaS, where you have a bundle or a package like Whim or other companies that do that. So these companies were relatively hyped pre-pandemic, at least 2 or 3 years before that, and there was a lot of interest in market pilots for MaaS. Since the pandemic struck, you could say that this graph on the right-hand side is the Gartner hype cycle. You can see from this that MaaS is typically depicted as past the so-called peak of inflated expectations. Interest is now sharply declining. So the question is where MaaS will end up. At the bottom here, you can see something called a trash heap of failures. Hopefully we won't end up there, like most of the contenders in the go-karting yesterday. But there are multiple reasons to be a little bit cynical here. So during the pandemic, several pilots, particularly in Sweden, but also elsewhere, were actually cancelled. Or even worse, they actually ran during the pandemic, and selling and recruiting people to shared mobility was quite difficult during this time. So these produced quite difficult, disappointing results in terms of uptake and actual use. Since the pandemic, several MaaS startups, several commercial actors are either struggling financially, such as MaaS Global, which until recently was sort of very desperate for investment. A few have gone bankrupt, such as our Swedish darling UbiGo or the Finnish Kitty. Some have been shut down, like Zipster. So the question is, what will happen in the future to MaaS? Are we really in a period of decline, and will this disappear? Will there perhaps be a reboot phase where there is perhaps a refocusing of MaaS so that it perhaps includes these more individual and personalized modes, such as the private car? Perhaps there will be a consolidation in the B2B segment. Or maybe there will be an increased focus on integrating passenger transportation with other things, such as good deliveries. There are some good examples of MaaS which has been integrated into banking services in Belgium and now insurance in Italy. So it's really uncertain what will happen in the future. And just to finish off, a few sort of notes on the new normal in terms of what will working from home actually result in the sort of near to long term. So here I've noted 4 points that are just intended to raise some questions among you. So what will the effects be of working from home more frequently? Will private vehicles have even lower utilization rates, for instance? We say the private car is typically standing still 95% of the time. Will that become even lower because people are working from home at least half of their time? Contrary to that, will there be a comeback for shared mobility because of financial hardships? So now we're facing sort of raised energy prices and inflation. And typically, in times of hardship, shared modes become more popular. another long-term potential effect that could be that people become less creative and less innovative because they're working in isolated sort of silos from home. They're not meeting one another and generating new ideas. So like at the sort of macroeconomic level, we might see a dip in creativity and innovation because of this. Maybe people will actually be forced back to the workplace. Or maybe there'll be something in between where you have sort of co-working spaces, for instance, in rural mobility hubs, sticky ones, very sticky ones in this case, where people actually travel not all the way to the office, but they travel to a local hub to sit there instead. So those were just a few ideas from me. And if you'd like to get in touch, there's my information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sarasini. We are going to move on to the next speaker,
Yes.
and we'll have time for questions and discussion during our panel.
Should I leave?
Yes, go.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sebastian T. Hannebo. And for those of you that have been with us as part of this conference, you've heard him described many times as both a project leader in Region Värmland and the project manager of the Stronger Combined project. He is a man of many roles: cinnamon rolls, crab rolls, dice rolls, Rolls Royce, and more. Today, Sebastian will be presenting his experiences dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic during this project. Whether the Värmland project or the Stronger Combined project as a whole, we shall see. Welcome back again, Sebastian.
Thank you. Now I've had a lot of hats on, and I've had eaten a lot of rolls. Yeah.
And been a lot of roles.
Yeah, been a lot of rolls. Okay, good.
So we're excited what you have to hear. Are you going to be talking more about the projects in Värmland or about the Stronger Combined?
I'm actually going to give small examples, a very quick introductory presentation that we can come back to in the panel discussion later about both roles. So
Cool.
It's good that you mentioned all my roles.
All the roles.
All the roles.
Sushi rolls. I forgot that. Of course.
Perfect.
Of course. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Sebastian T. Hannebo.
Thank you. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about project management during a pandemic and the experiences that we had as a lead beneficiary of this Strong Combined project. As you all know the background already, we had to deal with a lot of social distancing and travel bans, and we had like messages going out like, do you really need to travel? If it's possible, you can walk, cycle, or go by car. We also said like, you don't take public transport at all, which was very hard across Europe for all kind of public transport agencies, right? But in Sweden, we were relatively lucky. We were relatively open compared to the rest of Europe, and we still suffered a great decrease in ridership. To some extent, almost up to 50% loss of ridership. So how does this actually affect a project that focuses on transport solutions, public transport solutions? As a lead beneficiary, we were very sad. We had to cancel a partner meeting, as Robert said earlier on, in March of 2020. So we were already prepared to go, and then we got the decision that we were not allowed to travel anymore. We also had to deal with extensions of the project, two COVID extensions, which resulted in more reporting for all partners and also for us administratively towards the joint secretariat. We also had a partner dropping out because of financial difficulties due to COVID. So they were all kind of things that we really need to figure out how to do. So we stayed positive, and we had a lot of contact with the joint secretariat to figure all these things out. And one of the good things that came out from the pandemic when it comes to like project management for the whole project was that we decided together with Rice, Robbie and Steven, great guys, to do monthly check-ins with all partners. We organized them around the evaluation, which was what Rice was doing, and we organized them in smaller groups that had similar pilots and similar themes. And they were all attended by me, the lead beneficiary, and also by a communication leader. So it was a good way to stay updated on what's going on. And we also really got to know each other, and we really cultivated a good team spirit within the project. And so to some extent, if we were really to start the project today, this is something that I would like to do. And I've learned that I'd like to do this very early on. So you faster get to know each other, because when you really know each other, that's when you can truly be Stronger combined. And here's the picture with the stronger combined symbol, right? So this is from one of our check-ins, and we have had like a great time, and we really enjoy working together. So it's been a very good journey in that sense. Just quickly also to briefly touch upon how the pandemic has affected our regional, so I put on my regional hat or role, and how it affected our pilots. We also had a pilot that was about opening school buses for the public to book. So in Sweden, school buses can be a closed bus where only school kids are allowed to travel with. But there are also school buses that are open to the public. So we decided to open up our public or school buses to the public, and then in order to travel with it, you had to book a place on it. So we at least had some control of who were on the bus. We had to delay the service several times as we were communicating, like, don't travel with our public transport. So we delayed it and waited, and there was a lot of worries from the municipalities and also from parents whether or not this was a safe way to travel. So that was something that happened because of COVID-19. So what did we do? We decided to think positive, and what we were able to get that was positive because of COVID is that we had more time to prepare. Usually projects can be a bit rushed, but here we really had the time to, test through the software that we would develop, the booking site. So we really were prepared, and the service was robust when we finally were able to launch it. And then that was also a success. So I was very happy about that. And then the other regional pilot I've talked on briefly this morning was that we have a bike sharing system. We had to change our pilot partner here because we were working with the hospitals in Karlstad and Arvika, and obviously they had other things to focus on. So we shifted our partners to the municipalities, which also resulted in an opening up of the system to the public, which has been super successful, and we're very happy with that. We also were able to, we had delivery issues, but we were able to find a local business that had a subcontractor in Italy that actually created these bikes or built these bikes. So they were able to ship them over to us much faster than the conventional bikes that we were looking at in the beginning. And also it affects, obviously, how do we evaluate a pilot that's been running during a pandemic, which is very, very hard. But what we can see that has been very, very positive is that more people wanted to use a bike in the pandemic because it's not in a closed space. I also want to bring forward another result that we talked about earlier today, which is the village hubs in West Hook. They also, during the pandemic, got a different kind of meaning to the village, which is like they were very a social focal point where people could at least interact with someone, or else they would be home for a long day during lockdowns and stuff. But they could go to these village hubs to at least buy a packet of milk, some groceries, and the social importance of the village hubs were very, very easily seen during the pandemic, as that might be the only interaction you had during the day. So to summarize, we learned a few different things, that there is always a solution, and that there are some silver linings as well, that we were able to get more time. We found a togetherness, although it was in digital form, and we also found other benefits from the project that we were doing that we might not have intended for it to be in the beginning. And also, if I want to send you an advice, is to always keep in contact with your joint secretariat, because if anything can happen, they will be able to help you out. And that's me. So I think we will wait with the questions until after.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Thanks again.
Good.
And we'll see you in a moment and discuss and ask you questions. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Okay. We are moving on to our third and final presenter in this session on COVID-19. And that presenter is Petra Buitenhus, manager of projects from Publiek, Vervoer, Groningen, Drenthe. Petra will be presenting on how to deal with the effects of COVID-19 in special target groups in transportation. Welcome, Petra.
Thank you.
We look forward to hearing your presentation. A quick question before you get started.
Yeah.
You drove here all the way from the Netherlands. So tell me, which stretch of so you crossed through part of the Netherlands,
Yeah,
Germany,
yeah,
Denmark,
yeah,
and southern Sweden.
yeah.
So what is your favorite part? What was your favorite stretch of that drive?
I think the boat.
The boat?
Not even by car.
Oh.
But the boat. We went by boat by
the
Stena line.
interoperable
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
cross different modes of transportation.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Was the no taxes. So yeah, quick shopping. So everything was good on the boat.
Did you
so
take the boat from Frederikshavn?
from Frederikshavn
Okay.
to Göteborg.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which of the cities that you went through and that you've seen on this trip is your favorite city?
Gothenburg.
Ah, of course.
Yeah, of
thank
course.
you. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
And after Petra's presentation, Stephen and Sebastian will just come right back up here with me, and we'll transition straight into the discussion panel.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. Well, before I will tell about what the influence of COVID was on Publiek Vervoer, first let me start by telling what it actually is. Publiek Vervoer is a cooperation organization of 22 municipalities in 2 provinces in the Netherlands. And our tasks are the contract management, complaint handling, and further development of transport. We do this for multiple groups of people. We've got about 3 different target groups. Our first target group is the disabled people who are not capable of riding by bus or own car. The target group of students who go to school. Those are schools for children with learning difficulties. And our third target group are some local buses that run to schools and shopping malls by schedule. Our biggest goal as Publiek Vervoer is to have all forms of public transport and target group transport carried out as integrally as possible. This results in cost savings for the municipality, but even more importantly, the passenger retains a good and affordable transport network. I would like to take you to January 2020. That was the moment that the first COVID infection was detected in the Netherlands. It started small, but very quickly became a big problem with global consequences. And a small part of those consequences soon became visible within public transport. The infection rose rapidly, and in March 2020 came the first lockdown in the Netherlands. All social recreational associations were closed. No rummy cup, no horse riding, no Pilates. Schools closed, all social life suddenly came to a standstill. As a result, there was no demand for target group transport. So the taxi companies went from 100% turnover to maybe 10% in a week's time. Publiek Vervoer has opted for a compensation of 80% of the loss of turnover. And in fact, aid from public funds is not permitted, but an exception has been made for this special situation. It seems that the COVID pandemic is largely over. Target transport has started up again. The contract at the 22 municipalities have together can be executed. In other parts of the Netherlands, other choices have been made during the pandemic. There, for example, the carriers were asked to scale down in numbers of vehicles and to let staff go. Now that the transport has been pulled back on, in many places of transport it cannot be carried out because there are no vehicles available. The large staff shortage also makes it impossible to carry out target group transport in many places in the Netherlands. At Publiek Vervoer, the target group transport is still according to contract, but due to the constant uncertainty about the return of COVID infections and the shortage of staff, it is walking on a thin line. The COVID pandemic leaves us with 2 dilemmas. The first dilemma concerns the agreements we have made with the municipalities and the carriers. When the agreements had been running for a long time and the agreements were clear, with 22 municipalities had to work together about how will we solve this, it turned out that Europe's decision deviated from our chosen line. In contrast to the chosen 80% compensation for the loss of turnover, A maximum of 70% was allowed from Europe. This would mean that the municipalities have given 10% loss of turnover as unlawful state aid. We have advised municipalities to declare the given 80% loss of turnover to Europe. It now remains to be seen what the reaction from Europe will be to this. That's our first dilemma, but of course we've got a second one, because when will we know what the new normal will be? At the moment, the carriers are driving 80% of the volume of pre-COVID journeys. Is this going to increase? And should we wait until we're back at 100%? And will we ever get back to 100%? People may have found a different mode of transportation during the pandemic and are not coming back. Fewer journeys also means less turnover for the carriers. With this reduced turnover, they would still not make it and go bankrupt. Of course, this is not the intention after all the support that the municipalities have given them. We can't help the carriers forever, but we also don't want them to go bankrupt either. So that's our second dilemma. Is it all bad? Well, most of it is. Robbie already mentioned, most of COVID was bad. But what will we do in the meantime when we don't know what the future will bring? We have found a construction to support our carriers. We call it a fluctuation schedule. Depending on the number of trips driven, it is determined how much extra compensation the carriers receive from the municipalities. For example, if fewer trips are driven in November than in the period before COVID, the extra compensation will be higher. We will keep this schedule for a while, due to the staff shortages and the impact of COVID. Working with this schedule was only possible by changing the original agreement with those 22 municipalities. It was a lot of work, but it was certainly worth it. So was it all bad in the COVID pandemic? Most of it is. But fortunately, we also got something good out of it. The cooperation between the municipalities and the carriers has become very strong, and we would like to keep it that way. The distinctive role of Publiek Vervoer in the cooperation between municipalities is also seen by the participants. The special collaboration has also been noticed nationally, and we are regularly asked to tell about our way of working together and the system and processes we use for this. So what's our conclusion? COVID is here to stay, but it also applies to Publiek Vervoer. Thank you for your attention.
Fantastic. Thank you, Petra. Now we'll bring all of our panelists and Graham back into the studio to have a little bit of discussion about the impacts of COVID-19. So first, let's hear a little bit from Graham. Why don't you introduce yourself so that our viewers can know where you're coming from?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Graeme Scott. I'm from Glasgow in Scotland, which apparently is currently very wet at the moment. It's not unusual for that country, for those that have been there. And I work for Arcadis IBI Group, and we've had a kind of support role throughout the Stronger Combined project. And you know, from a MaaS perspective, I've been involved in MaaS projects for a number of years. I've been working with Hightrans, and I'm the chair of MaaS Scotland. So all of these developments, and particularly over the last few years with the impact of COVID, has been quite important. And I know from the initial question where we were asking, it's not just, I guess, the negative impacts of COVID, but there have been positive influence as well, and that's something we can take forward and hopefully we can bring out in this session. And
yeah.
I trailed in Steve's wake in the go-karting last night, just to pad him up again.
I was going to wear my medal for this. No.
Yeah.
Well, let's give credit where credit is due. Graham was the gold medalist in the loser group.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something to be proud of, but yeah.
Hey, I was third.
And I was also there. Okay, so Graham, you brought up this question about positive lessons maybe, or positive things that we could have gotten out of the COVID pandemic. I I thought of a positive one, but what did you have in mind? What do you think is a good example of this?
I think it is, and I noticed some of the responses in the chat, that it is the change from how we work and how we live, and there's been more of that focus to working from home, and I think that's maybe reduced the need to travel in some cases, and I think we will see that going forward. I know the supplementary question at the start was whether we will see a change, and I think it will stay the same for a long time. We're now getting used to, we don't have to be in the office every day, you know, and I think that does make a difference in respect of travel. Now, one of the things we found in Scotland, which is, again, is quite interesting in terms of how you frame transport services. Traffic levels have gone back and actually exceeded the levels they were in advance of the pandemic.
You mean public transit?
No, actually car traffic and car
sorry.
trips. But the actual patterns are different. So there's not the morning and evening peak. It's far more spread throughout the day. So that's had an impact on how people are travelling, and it's maybe gone back to more of the dependency on car traffic, whereas public transport levels, as Steve indicated, haven't yet bounced back to the levels there. So we've probably over 20, 30 years of achieving behaviour change and modal shift. It's almost like in the last couple of years that's been reversed. So we've got work to do, but that's where innovation, it's not just looking at transport in isolation, but again, how we work, how we live, all of that needs to come together to really shape how you design and deliver future transport services.
Yeah, it absolutely really, it makes us all reconsider where we live and how we work is connected to transportation. We could have almost taken for granted before that if you have a job, there is a commute, you do leave your home, and then everyone else, you know, we all thought before, the people that worked at home, well, you're a lucky few that got to work from home. This whole experience makes me think about, was COVID-19, or at least the impacts that it had on the different things, the systems that we were observing and managing, we think of it as this exceptional period where, you know, everything changed and we had to cope with a new reality. But is it really a departure from reality? Is it possible that we may, as a society, be entering an era where we just can expect to have instability and big change? We have climate change. We didn't anticipate the pandemic, but even since the pandemic now, you know, we have these big, wars that we didn't anticipate, fuel crises that we didn't anticipate, inflation that we didn't anticipate. Is major change and shock to the system the new normal?
For us it is. At Publiek Vervoer we have a weekly meeting, and it seems like every week something else pops up. If it's not COVID, I think we've had the top of, that's slowing down. But then came the fuel shortage, then came strikes because of the inflation and demand for higher salaries. The shorts on, I don't know if it's in English also, chips for cars. So new cars, new innovations, all stopped, and every week we've got something new.
Okay.
It's always different at our team meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily sure that it changes how we are behaving. Because I'm very interested to hear if you've done anything special in Scotland to push down the peaks of traveling. But because in Sweden, we feel, or at least in Värmland, we don't see that. We see a complete shift. So we saw a decrease, but all over the whole day. And when they're coming back, we still see the same peaks. It's not that they have been short or smaller now. So we still travel in the same pattern, just not as much as we did before. But now we're catching up. Yeah. So it doesn't have to, even though we're shocked with this, does that mean that we change our behavior? We still have a lot of people driving cars, even though it's very expensive at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think in times, it's hard to predict the future. We are, without doubt, in times of shock and change. There are these external sort of landscape events that are influencing the way we do many things, not just travel. And there are many social theories that state that during these times of shock and like external sort of events that will influence different socio-technical systems like transport and energy and things like that, that's when you really have windows of opportunity for change. So it's hard to see that even in the sort of short to near term after a shock has occurred. It often takes maybe a generation for a transition like this to actually occur. So it's very hard to predict what will happen, but ordinarily when there is some kind of shock like this, it opens up, it gives the opportunity for change. And also these things that have been, sometimes the case is that you can have some kind of new innovation that has been struggling a little bit, and then all of a sudden it just bursts through. I couldn't name one of those today, but perhaps it's micromobility. Perhaps that's one of the things in transportation that has really burst through. It might be partially linked to COVID, but it's also linked to maybe the way transport systems are set up and the gaps and the holes in them, and also maybe due to generational shifts. It will be interesting to see if we have a prolonged energy crisis now, what the long-term impacts of that will be on transportation and other things. We could see more shared mobility, for instance. That's typically what happens when people do more ride-hailing and carpooling and things like that when you have high energy prices and not lots of money. So, but it's, we don't have a crystal ball, so.
No, I think just to add to the point there about the change is, I think there's maybe the pandemic has led to other changes, and because you're not necessarily having to travel 5 days a week for work or for study, then it becomes more of a focus on the local community. And in that case, maybe the journey lengths or durations are shorter, which makes it more attractive for the likes of micromobility or other shared modes as well. It was what Kathy was talking about earlier, is the whole community aspect of it. And again, it's maybe not look at transport in isolation or mobility in isolation, but start to think of those wider functions. I mean, from the academic perspective, the whole land use and transport integration has been something that's been looked at for many, many years, and this might be the great opportunity to kind of do so when you start to look at everything rather than a siloed mode, but start to think of everything together. They're all related.
Yeah.
I read a study some time ago, this was a few years back, but it was a longitudinal study of travel times over, I think, 200 years. And the really odd and strange constant was that people traveled on a daily basis, on average, 90 minutes. Yeah. Irrespective of where they lived, of trends like urbanization and the sort of rise of the car and public transportation systems, people just stuck to that 90-minute window. And I think maybe the pandemic and working from home might have cut that. People might be working less than 90 minutes per day and perhaps putting their time towards other things that they can do maybe around the home, spend more time with the family. Feels like there's a bit of a sort of calming effect of the pandemic. Not sure it's felt everywhere, but certainly in some places.
And let's try to keep it that way.
Yeah.
So Sebastian and Stephen, both of you mentioned both at I think it was in the UK context, and then of course in your local context, that there was a spike in bike sharing, particularly in e-bikes. Petra, maybe you had access to that or not. I know that it's not probably something that your office works with all the time.
No.
And Greame, I'm not sure if you have any access to bike share, but I'm wondering, could this have been the innovation that was, struggling, and now e-bikes are once someone buys an e-bike, it's a big investment. People think, I might as well use it. Could that be a possibility? What potential futures do we see, for example, with e-scooters, other forms of micromobility? Is this something that is going to become a more and more normal part of our life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I personally even bought an e-bike as well, and I've biked more than I've done ever in my life. So yes, I think that's one of the reasons. Like it got popular, with spiking prices, all these kind of things all contribute to push you in one kind of direction. And for me, that was to purchase an e-bike. And we are looking into, Region Värmland is looking into what can we do with public transport and micromobility together. So we're doing an investigation about the role of micromobility and for a public transport authority. So we're currently looking at like what are others doing, what road could we take, what legal hindrances would it be for us to do that? Should we provide e-bikes ourselves, or should we have other companies come in and help collaborate with us? So I think it's a very interesting, because we have this saying in public transport that we are a transport mode that takes you from a place where you're not at the moment to a place that you're not going. Because we pick you up at a bus stop, right? Which is not where you were. Yeah. And we leave you at another bus stop where you're not going. You still have two sections left, which is perfect for combined mobility. We have to look at the first and the last mile as well. Mm-hmm. And there's when I think micromobility can really fill a gap.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed another thing in all the presentations, that there was a sense of needing to respond to decisions that were made at a higher level, or different types of conditions that were set by the national government or maybe provincial government or kind of collection of municipalities, and then that was kind of the new conditions that had to be dealt with. I'm wondering how this might change the relationship between now local and national government. Are there certain circumstances where this intergovernmental relationship has been improved? Is it going to increase tension? I'm wondering if there's anything that you can glean from your experience there.
For us, it has increased the collaboration, because we all have got one goal. We all want rural areas to have a good network for transport. And because of Publiek Vervoer working together with 22 municipalities, you've got, the Netherlands is not so big, so then you've got a big part of the Netherlands, 2 provinces, and then national government more easily follows if you have good ideas, and you've got a bigger support by 22 municipalities and 2 provinces when you come with a good plan than if you come just by one and you want to sell it. So it gives us strength. Yeah.
Whereas in Sweden, I think there was kind of a more, at least the national government had more of a hands-off approach. And I know that regional governments had a really strong hand in what kind of changes had to be made. Did you feel any kind of tension as a regional authority? Was there any kind of tension between you and local authorities about how to manage transportation at the local scale?
I think we do have a conversation with, in particular, the municipalities who are going to receive the traffic that we provide from the region, and I think for planning traffic, they do have a big trust that we do what we need to do, and we do it well, right? But then when it comes to, for instance, the pilots that we've tested, I can sometimes feel that maybe we don't collaborate in a way that it's our project, because it's as in both municipality and region. It's maybe the region's project that the municipalities come and join, which is something that I've learned, and I want to work harder on to really get the feeling that we're doing this really together, because together we're stronger combined.
I'm going to dream that.
I want to ask Stephen about the future of, we'll call it big package MaaS.
Yes.
Right, so a big bundle MaaS, where we have the goal of getting as many transportation modes on a single platform. So I could have access to trains, buses, bikes. I know you understand this, but just to make sure that everyone else, trains, buses, bike, rental car, micromobility, all in the same app where you can pay and book and plan all at once. During the pandemic, we had several examples of initiatives like this failing. I wonder how much of this can be attributed to the pandemic. How much of this is just because it was not an idea whose time was now, or that maybe it wasn't ripe yet? And do you think that the market is a little more cautious about developing these big subscription bundles. And what does this mean for the future of commercialized mobility as a service?
Yeah, I'll take the last one first. I think I'll say definitely yes. The market is a bit more cautious now. I mentioned when I was speaking earlier that there have been a few failures in terms of bankruptcies or discontinuations within MaaS. So companies that have either gone down or just been stopped by their parent companies and things like that. To whether this is attributable to the pandemic, that's a different question. I think we haven't really seen the full benefits of this type of MaaS yet, like the full big bundle and the package and all the rest of it. And I think there are multiple reasons for that. I think one of the main reasons is that it's quite a radical concept for the typical, like most typical travelers. They struggle today with the concept of something very simple like car sharing. Simple to us, perhaps difficult for them to understand. Okay, how does that work compared to when I say own my car or when I take the bus? So the idea of this sort of integrated offer with multiple modes and intermodal travel, this is a bit too much for most travelers, I'd say. So I would say, yeah, a lot of the pilots that have been run have suffered because I don't think they fully understood that. So there is a need for like a really strong focus on service design. How do you actually design a service which is attractive, but also how do you communicate that to people? How do you recruit those people? And I mean, if you compare, say, some of the servitization initiatives in the automotive sector today, the advertising for those is huge. It's in every social media platform, like all over the place. As soon as you search for one of them, which I did recently, then tons appear because of the algorithm. The equivalent doesn't really exist for MaaS. So we don't really have that today where you have a big, strong sort of marketing drive for MaaS. And I think because of that, we don't really understand the full benefits of it. Having said that, I think it's perhaps a little bit too ambitious to go for that type of MaaS today. I think maybe other configurations of integrated mobility, so integrating more simpler things, looking for the low-hanging fruit, or finding new applications, say in the B2B sector, like I mentioned, where you can potentially get access to a large number of users through one, large employer, for instance. That might be more beneficial in the near term. I don't know if I answered all your questions.
Just to add some supplementary to it.
So let's come a little closer together here.
Sorry. But
the pandemic is over.
yeah, but okay, yeah, that's what I was But to really get significant behaviour change takes time. And are we expecting too much in such a short space of time with MaaS? You need to get people familiar with it, they need to be aware of it, and become comfortable using it. And again, with a lot of what we're trying to do, particularly in the rural context, is you want to give people viable alternatives to owning a car, or not just owning a car, but owning a second or third car, which often is the case. So you need to have confidence that the solutions are there, the work, that it's there. As you say, it's the whole service delivery. But that takes time to make sure people are aware of it. And it could be you buy a car, it could be a 3, 4, 5 year cycle. So it comes up to that. When is that next renewal period? So you are looking at a much longer term program, I think, to deliver these things. And it's just almost like have faith with it. I think we all believe it's the right thing to do. It might need some iteration and tweaks as we go along and get some lessons learned, but it does take time.
Well, if it takes time and that it could be a fragile way forward, it certainly makes sense to me that we start with smaller configurations, smaller partnerships, so that they can fail fast and we can try something new, rather than make people bitter and immediately dismiss the idea of MaaS because something that was big and visionary just completely collapsed. And I certainly think that it would be a mistake to consider mobility as a service dead just because these bigger initiatives didn't make it through the pandemic.
It also depends how much we leave it to the market. One thing that we learned from the pandemic is that you could actually introduce really draconian measures, which are super unpopular, but people will, for the most part, follow them. And they will have massive implications for behavior, but also other things. So there is, I think, to speed up what Graeme just described, it does take time. The government can play a role, or governments can play a role. We have the Paris agreements mean that most cities across Europe, for instance, must become nearly zero in terms of CO2 by 2030. I think if you look at the current trend and extrapolate that, every city is going to miss it. So we don't really although you can discuss whether MaaS is dead or other measures are dead, we don't really have the option. We kind of have to succeed. Like the current way is unsustainable, and everyone owning their own car is unsustainable. We need to do something which is a lot smarter and a lot more shared, and a lot more resource efficient. So maybe we should be looking to our politicians to give us a bit more of an incentive and a push to bring this about, rather than just let the market decide or let the pilots run their course and all the rest of it.
So, with that idea, if you could play dictator for a day, and you could decide what policy to implement, is there something, or if you could, wave a magic wand and change something to transform mobility after this pandemic, very quickly, name one thing that you would try and implement. We'll start with you, since you brought up the idea of mandating change.
Yeah, so I think mobility budgets are a strong tool. They've been implemented in Belgium, and the idea is quite simple. Everyone has a mobility budget, and you try and
Every person.
Okay. And you can equalize, some current tax reductions you might get for, say, a company car, but you can use those for different types of mobility services. Even use them for your rent in some instances. And I think that's given rise to quite a lot of exciting stuff in MaaS in Belgium. So I think mobility budgets is a way forward, where you look at a citizen as having mobility needs, rather than, say, create tax incentives for different modes or different fuels or something like that.
Well,
I think related to that, and I'd say road pricing. And I know it's never a popular move, but you hear so often people don't really understand the true value of owning and operating a car. The ownership costs, so the insurance, maintenance, or sunk costs. When you think of what's the cost of a car, it's just fuel, and it needs to be far more than that. And again, if you then really truly understand the cost of using a private car for journeys where it's not absolutely necessary or there are options, then that's got to be a positive move to facilitate more of a shift as well. And again, if you've got that whole revenue generation, you can look at the whole funding of transport in a different way, which might fund like the model of mobility wallets.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know where they have congestion pricing? Gothenburg. Petra.
Yeah, I would say getting rid of all those layers of different governments. One vision for everybody, not just local or national, but European and even global. If we all have one vision on where we want to go, then we're there.
Spoken like a true dictator.
Yes!
Sebastian.
Collaboration.
Collaboration.
Yeah.
You will collaborate. Yeah.
I want to take a step higher from dictator to God. So I would want
Why not?
I would want a situation where everyone would have tried to live without a car, or at least be open, have an open mindset about how they're going to be able to do it. Because I think a lot is also about not being ready, or like personally ready to try something new.
Agnostic?
Yeah,
No.
maybe. No, but as in you haven't tried, or you don't want to try because you've always been anti public transport.
Yeah.
So at least in a situation where everyone has tried, we would have an easier time to reach out.
I absolutely agree. I think it's really important that people understand what it's like to live without a car, and then they may be more sympathetic to policies that make it easier for everyone to use all modes of transportation, because when we all have the same experiences, we are stronger combined. This concludes our panel. Thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists. We are, I think, moving on to our sixth and final session. in today's results conference. So thank you, panelists. You can go enjoy some dessert that I think is being served out in the hall. And I will go ahead and introduce this next session. How lucky we are to be in the presence of all these experts and these different perspectives. It really is a privilege. Welcome again to those of you that are just joining us to our final session of the first, last, unique, and extremely special Stronger Combined Results Conference. If you're just tuning in, this is a day-long conference just devoted to Stronger Combined, which is an innovation project funded by Interreg North Sea to help rural regions, small towns, and tourist destinations develop mobility solutions that work in their contexts. We've had a whole lot of sessions today. We've seen one related to technical solutions, mobility hubs, interoperability and multimodal solutions in rural areas, a discussion of the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on transportation, and then a follow-up panel. We are going to now move into a final session, which is about this final session will discuss marketing to special populations. Mobility solutions are always designed with a consumer in mind, whether consciously or unconsciously. And all too often, this customer that they have in mind is an able-bodied person who can easily transport themselves. There's lots of reasons that an individual wouldn't be able to function by themselves on a normal bus. It could be from physical disabilities. It could be because of age, either young age or old age. And so it's important that we are able to work with populations that are outside of the able-bodied mainstream. So we've already seen a presentation about how open data can help support passengers with visual impairments, and I'm excited to hear what our presenters have to say today. Our first presenter in the session is Ida Tiverman, who is a project coordinator and communicator at Region Värmland and communication officer for the Stronger Combined project. Ida has been instrumental in the Stronger Combined project, keeping the pilots moving forward and communicating among the different partners. And today she will discuss communication for open school buses. Welcome on. Welcome. Yeah. Ida, we're excited to hear your presentation on school buses.
Yeah.
Did you take the bus to school as a kid?
A couple times actually with my friends. I have experienced taking the school bus. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
That's our chit chat.
Yes.
Now we're moving on to the presentation.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about open school buses and the pilots that Region Värmland has developed called Innlandstrafikk, as Sebastian mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to see here. Yeah, and the communication plan for the launch of Innlandstrafikk. So to start off, what is Innlandstrafikk? Innlandstrafikk is a pilot that has to open up the school buses for the public. We wanted to make this service because there's been a need for better public transport on the countryside in Värmland for a very, very long time. And there are school buses traveling all over Värmland every day where regular public transport doesn't go. These buses have empty seats, and we wanted to take advantage of these empty seats and offer them to the public. So we saw this as an effective way to offer more public transport to more people on the countryside. So during the spring of 2022, we launched the service in two very small towns here in Värmland, Grums and Fagerås. And now I'm going to talk about how we set up the communication for Innlandstrafikk. So when launching a brand new service in very small towns, there come challenges. How do we target groups that can use this service, since the school buses are adapted to the school children's schedule? The buses go early in the morning and early in the afternoon, and they all can shift from day to day depending on the school children's schedule. And how do we get people to feel also positive about this pilot, since we understood it can be mixed feelings from parents to let strangers on the bus with their children. So with this in mind, moving on to the target groups, we saw that the target groups are people connected to the school as teachers and parents. We also saw that elderly people had the time to travel with the bus that goes on the irregular times. And also children who are not eligible to ride to the school buses, because we have children going to the schools but are not able to ride with the school buses since maybe they are living too close to the school and such. So with mixed traffic, they were also able to go with the school buses. So that's the target groups and how we went about with the communication then. So before the launch, we established a very good contact with the municipalities that we were going to launch mixed traffic in. And we also created good communication with the schools. So like 2 weeks before the actual launch, we sent out informations to the parents through the school channels just to like tell them about mixed traffic and tell them about the advantage and have like Q&A. So so there will be positive vibe for the launch and like positive feeling about the service. So we send out information through the schools, but we also send out information through the school buses, so we could target the parents also that were not reading school's information. And also with this information, we invited parents to a residents dialogue just to like cover all the questions and maybe cover all the negative energy before the actual launch. There wasn't any parents showing up to the actual residents dialogue, but it shows that we had good information and they were felt comfortable with the service, so that was nice. So when we then pressed go for the actual launch, we could just calmly press launch on our social media, post it and tell us about the service. We had a press release with the radio, so that was also nice. We also, so we had like with the communication before the actual launch, we had targeted the children, we had targeted the parents with this communication. The rest of the target group, like elderly persons or those who can take the school bus on these irregular times, we used Facebook ads, targeted Facebook ads, just to reach them in these small areas. We also published articles in the newsletter, in municipalities' newsletter. So we were going very local for this project with our communication. And so the reactions then from the launch was so positive. It was many positive reactions, which was so nice for us. And we had our comment section on our Facebook was like, oh, this is such a good idea. I see the bus going every day for outside my house, and now we can take it. It's so good. There were also comments saying like, oh, I hope this comes to my town as well. So very positive overall, but as always, there's some negative reaction as well. When you you try all your best to tell all parents and just create this positive vibe, there are always some you miss. But since we had done this all Q&A and had invited to residents dialogue, we also felt safe answering these bad or negative comments. So that was very nice reaction overall. So then moving on to the results of the actual pilot. We have seen that school kids that could not travel with the school buses are now doing that in a wider sense. And people connected to the school, as teachers and parents, as we said, are using the service, not every day, but much. So that's nice also. And as we have seen, we have also created a communication formula that works. We have seen that, okay, when we do these steps, we create these positive vibes, we get the positive reactions. So also we are expanding the MaaS, the service, to the whole of Värmland. So we will be using this communication formula in the future as well. So that's very nice. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida.
Thank you.
This is a really interesting pilot. I wonder, my first question is, do you know any other regions or cities that have done something like this?
Not what, that I'm aware of. I know that they are like, as children using like regular public transport in, all over Sweden. So, but I don't know. No, I have to look it up. I hope that we are the first. I think we have also mentioned one time before that we are actually the first. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So we are gonna say that today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are the
We're
first.
the first.
MaaS was the first. So
It's stronger combined.
Yeah.
We said it's stronger combined.
Exactly.
And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the negative comments that you heard from people. Were they people that were, if I understand correctly, these were comments before the service even started, right?
Yeah.
Or was it after?
No, it was after, because like as I said, we did this like sending out information through the schools, sending out information through the buses, and there were some parents that wasn't reading the stuff we wrote, so those were like shocked when we actually pressed launch, and it was because of the shock, I think. That
Were they shocked because they had kids on the bus and suddenly their kid had to share space
with strangers, as I said. So but as we have seen, it's mostly parents and teachers using it. So I don't know. Yeah. So it was. It's like you try, as I said, you try your best to like inform through the schools, and you can't do more. So how can we tell you if you don't read the information? So
But it seems like your communication strategy was really effective.
Yeah.
You kind of targeted multiple channels.
We used all the we did all we could really. So
Cool. Well,
thank you.
Congrats that you're scaling it up. That's good news.
Yeah.
And thanks for presenting.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now we're moving on to our second presentation. This is from Linda Mundenke, who is a demography officer in the city of Rinteln. The city of Rinteln has had quite a journey in this Stronger Combined project, and I think we're going to actually hear about from another speaker about one of the possible ideas that this project began with, but ultimately, and in a relatively fast amount of time, City of Rinteln has moved on to this cargo bike project, and so we're going to hear about that from Linda, and the title of her presentation is "Marketing of E-Cargo Bikes in Rinteln." Hi, Linda.
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear us and see us and everything?
Yes, everything is fine.
Great. And I see that it's a sunny day in Rinteln. How
Will be
impressive.
nice.
You're at the same longitude as us, almost same latitude, and it's a sunny day. How is that? No. Why don't you tell us the background behind you? Is this the city of Rinteln behind you?
Yes, it's the bridge, very popular bridge, and everybody knows it in Rinteln. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, it's good to see you, and we're looking forward to hear your discussion about marketing e-bikes, and hopefully you can tell us a little bit about how that pilot's also going, which I imagine is a natural part of such a presentation. So the floor is yours. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, and hello to everybody from Rinteln in Germany. Yes, Rinteln is a small city with 27,000 habitats and 18 parts around the biggest part, Rinteln. And so, yes, I will present a little bit of the marketing of the e-cargo bikes, and this idea grew up in an analysis of the Kollegienplatz in Rinteln by students of the University of Hannebo. And this analyzing was had the goal to look how we can make this Kollegienplatz to a transport hub for connecting all parts of Rinteln and to the center infrastructure. And there are many ideas we can't realize now because a founding that was planned is not coming to Rinteln, but the free e-cargo bikes we can realize. And yes, the aim of the pilot was that we want to offer a green mobility free of charge, and so make a support to switch to low carbon mobility. So to e-cargo bike is very expensive, and many people don't buy one but want to test it, and then maybe they buy it. And also another goal was to connecting all parts of Rinteln to the city and the infrastructure a little bit better than now or before the pilot. Yes, the pilot was free rental cargo bikes. We get two, or we own two cargo bikes, and also get one from the RDFC. The RDFC is a bicycle club, and we had various stations to test where the bikes are better, or people take the bikes more than on other stations. It was an online booking and also a personal rent, not a rent like with electronic ID or something like this, with the app or something. Just a short excursus. We also made a survey with RISE parallel to the pilot from March till October, and want also know something about cargo bikes using now or before the pilot. And yes, the results get answer we already know. This is just that car dominates in rural areas. The public transport is hardly used. These both are not so good, and we want to change it. And a few cargo bikes available, but there's a great interest, and our pilot shows this great interest. And yeah, they want to rental near the home, and this is what the pilot will show also. Yes, back to the pilot. The target groups was very difficult for us because a city most have everybody in the city as a target group, and so but for a good marketing we have to reduce it, and we not can really good reduce it, but we make a list with priority, and first priority was families with children up to age of 12. Then administration staff and people without car or who want to give it up, and all the other you can see. So of this target group, we can find many ways to contact these persons. Some way like a homepage or Instagram, Facebook, you can get a lot of these target groups, and other things like Friday for Future or the NABU, it's nature club. You have special of these target groups, or the kindergarten or something like this. Here you can see the whole planned activities, but I will jump over and go to what did we do, because during this time we get the cargo bikes and think about the marketing and how we want to offer it. We had a negative discussion from the one party of the politicals that don't understand the development of the project in Stronger Combined from 2019 till 2022. And so it take a lot of time, this discussion, and we lose a lot of time. And so at least we only can, visibly on the homepage, Instagram, Facebook, daily newspapers. We have one on paper and we have one online, and also a big shop window where the cargo bikes are parking. Also posters and flyers, an info mailing to the administration staff, and also the kindergarten and the schools. We have in our administration mailing lists. And also we can present the pilot 2 times on events in the city, and also 1 time it were presented from school. It was before of the real pilot start. And also we published 3 videos for use, or that shows how you can use the cargo bikes. You can see it on YouTube, and here are some impressions how we made the marketing to the cargo bikes. And what have we achieved? We had 3 cargo bikes at 6 rental stations. This rental station were in a tourist place. It was outside in a part of Rinteln 2 times, and it was in the center. So in 126 days, the cargo bikes were lent out, and from possible 185 days, and it takes 68%. And this rate is nearly the same rate that the ADFC in Berlin get. So we are very proud of this. And 55 bookings by 37 people. So there are many people who try it for our view, and also 68 registered persons. So there's potential for persons who can maybe or will rent the cars, the bikes later. And also we saved CO2 for 1,648 kilometers. If we drive with a car, it will be 337 kilo. And yes, all in all, we are very proud of this. And now many people ask for the cargo bikes and want to drive it. Yes, this is really a success. And what did we learn? Yes, the rental in the districts and in the city center works. Both station opportunities are good or were frequented. There's a great interest in green mobility in our small city and our urban city. Rural city. Negative press sometimes can help, maybe. I don't know if it help us for this, that everybody know about the pilot. And the setting up rental and the distribution of takeout take a lot of time for us. If we start, we don't believe it. But we have great partnerships built or getting stronger with the University of Hanover, ADFC, many others, and there now are many other projects that coming up or after this cargo bike or the stronger combine project. And the international cooperation in the pilot was nice experience and good or good information, and still going on within University of Hanover. At that time, there are students which think about the city center of the city of Rinteln, and we're very proud of this. What happens next? The time and cost spent at the city of Rinteln must be minimized because of the personal situation. And at that time, companies can rent the cargo bikes for a long time to test it as a bike for the daily work. And December and March, we planned that everybody can book it again about the platform, and then also up to 2 weeks to minimize the organizations for us. And yes, the big next step is to think about what happens up till 2023. Maybe another organization or person or local part can take the bikes and offer it to the citizen, or maybe we have to sell it to an organization. We have to decide it in the next few months. Yes, thank you very much for your attention. And I don't know if there's time for question or not.
Right. Well, I have a question, of course. We do have a little bit of time, I think. My first question to you, Linda, is: have you used one of these cargo bikes?
A little bit. I'm a bit scared, but I'm not living in Rinteln. I'm living 30 minutes by car away, so I only drive it short parts from one station to the other or something like this, but not very long.
I see. And then one other question, not a complicated one. Do you know what kind of cargo was being transported when people were using the cargo bikes? Do you have any knowledge about that?
No, not really. I know that a few users transport their children.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing, but the others, I don't know. No, it's a good question.
Precious cargo.
Interesting.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to see you and hear you. And we are going to move on to our next presentation. So Thank you, Linda. Our next presenter brings us to the mountains of Norway. And we will hear from Ålesandra Elshön, marketing advisor for Innlandstrafikk. This is a project that deals with tourism in the mountains of Norway, and I think is one of the most interesting cases in the Stronger Combined project, particularly because this is a popular place to travel, and it's a place that can't always handle the capacity that lots of personal vehicles bring in terms of parking, in terms of infrastructure. So it makes a lot of sense for them to develop an opportunity for the visitors to use another form of transportation. Ålesandra is going to, the title of his presentation is Mountain Routes, Combined Mobility in the Norwegian Mountains.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to see you in person.
You as well, Robert.
We've corresponded over the course of the project, but never actually been in the same place. So it's finally nice to see you.
First physical meeting in 3 years.
Yeah.
For me.
Wow. Yeah. Very interesting. So I'm excited to hear about the project and where it has been. I haven't heard about the results from over the summer. So I'm excited to hear how things went, and the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about combined mobility in the Norwegian mountains. I'm working as a marketing advisor in Innlandstrafikk, as Robert said, which is a PTA in Innlandet County. As any other PTA, our main objective is to transport school children, commuters, and in the summertime, some leisure travels and special tourists going for hiking in the mountains. Innlandet is the #1 leisure county in Norway, and tourism is a big industry in our rural areas. The area around Jotunheimen National Park is an attractive arena for hiking. Most of the highest mountains in Norway are located here. There's the slide as well. Innlandet County is located in the eastern Norway. In the south, we are bordering to more populated areas around the biggest city in Norway, Oslo. The county itself is sparsely populated with its 370,000 inhabitants spread across an area as big as Denmark in square kilometers. This means that there are a lot of route kilometers driven in Innlandet every day. And some of these route kilometers are driven in the Jotunheimen area every summer, where we have our mountain routes concept. The mountain route concept is a network of bus routes that run in areas of several national parks. The concept also includes external private operators like express buses and mountain ferries with routes in the area. And train is connected from the major cities. The concept has been built since 2012, and the main idea is that no bus route can stand alone, but that it's the totality of all routes that make the concept and the opportunities. The opportunity to travel eco-friendly before starting the hike to Norway's highest peaks, and that the bus make it possible to take another way back than where you came from. We have always tried to work with the local tourist industry to anchor the mountain routes. We believe that they play an important role in making the bus as a trademark in these rural areas. Okay, so this is a map of the mountain routes going into this project. As you can see, all these lines are taking you around, to, from, and into the highest mountains of Norway. It also shows the mountain ferries. What this map doesn't show you is that it's all connected with train and express buses from the major cities in Norway. It also don't show where which line goes and where you need to switch between mobility solutions. Our goal into this project was to develop the mountain routes concept, and we believed to doing that what we needed and what we wanted to increase the collaboration with the local tourist destination companies. They know their customer best. Overall, we wanted to increase the number of travelers using mountain routes. And this is how we decided to do it. There were time and geographic gaps in our concept from before, so we needed 2 new pilot routes. As I already said, we wanted to come closer to the tourist industry and the other transport providers in the area for mountain routes. So we wanted to create a collaboration platform. We wanted to help the tourist industry to help us gain passengers to the concept. So we made a landing page we wanted to make a landing page for digital confirmation, or at least upgrade the one that we had. Okay, so all set. That was what we were going to do, but then I'm not even going to repeat those letters and numbers. We all know them too well. But basically, the Norwegian government decided that all transport should go as usual, but they didn't allow us to market public transport. And we had to post on social media as the one in the picture here. It pretty much says, all buses are now back in route again. Don't use it if you have other transport options. So, what do we do? The project was intentionally going to run till June 2022, meaning this is a season concept. We only had 1 year left after this, and we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last. We had been working with these 2 supplement routes, and at least they could be a great result indicator. As we now know, the project ended up being extended. But we decided to go for it. We did the finishing planning with the operator and launched the routes. We were not allowed to market it, but we could inform about the routes if people find the service themselves. So we edited timetables, we made the routes available in the National Travel Planner and Tur, we reached out to the local newspaper, and we did some attempts to make travel tips online. So for the collaboration part, there was nothing else to do than to hold digital meetings, which is kind of hard when you want to sell in ownership and you want someone to be enthusiastic for you. Then finally, 2022, COVID was slowly coming to an end. And we could finally be working as we would like with a 2.0 version of mountain routes. The restrictions were gone and the project were extended for a complete mountain route season. We decided to tighten the collaboration. We created a platform for collaboration with the local stakeholders and of course for content sharing as well, and anchoring the concept within the local tourist sector. We held physical meetings and workshops with the industry. They helped us and we helped them with the marketing, the concept and the content sharing. Because we got to be honest, when you're going on holiday for hiking in Jotunheimen, you don't start your planning by Googling buses. We also engaged a collaboration with national organizations like Drenthe and TØI, all as a strategy to reach broader. And here you can see some of our activities. We had guided trips with the tourist industry. We held evaluation meeting with the tourist industry and the transport providers. And on the last photo, you can see me going viral with the manager of Visit Jotunheimen on both Facebook and Instagram. The physical activity was built on the information that we already had built online. So we had a new landing page with content that both we and the destination companies shared. We had lots of posts in social media about the concept. We used the opportunity to get photo material for the concept. And we constructed a new map. It's a bit cheesy to say, but we looked to London and to the underground. We wanted to show how good the mobility service in the Norwegian mountains are, and where each line you can take are. And we included the trains from the bigger cities. There is no one that just pops up in Jotunheimen. They are all coming from somewhere. On the other side here, you can see some of our content, a short text about the destination and how you can get there without using a car. And of course, a link to the destination in the National Travel Planner and Tur. So, how did it all went? I know you, Robert, are excited now. We increased the amount of travelers on the mountain routes with 37% compared to the last normal year, 2019. And as it goes for the result indicator, we increased there as well, our two pilot routes. After evaluating the last season, we felt that the tourist industry have a great interest to help us promote the mountain routes and that different stakeholders are ready to pull in the same direction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alexander. Thanks for presenting. I think I'm wondering which element of your communication strategy do you think was the most effective in getting the results that you got?
I gotta say the tourist industry.
Okay.
To getting them to pull in the same direction as we want them to, and as they should, because of the public transport in their area.
Yeah, absolutely. I was my favorite part of your presentation was the map. I love maps. I'm a map. I'm not a collector, but I have a lot of maps, and And it's amazing, you know, how much of a difference a good map can make. And I'm wondering, did you have to contract with like an artist or like a company to replicate the London Underground, or was that something that you guys could do in-house?
It's not like there's a thought of the underground, but it's not a replica.
No, but
in that way.
the style of the map.
style.
Yeah.
We have a graphic designer as a co-worker, and also we used a company that's our specialists on graphic and throwing the ball back and forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's when a traveler can see in a very simple way how they can get from point A to point B, it suddenly removes a big obstacle. So anyway, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We are now going to move on to our final presentation of the Stronger Combined Results Conference. And we will be going to Zoom to hear from our friend who is sitting in, I believe you're sitting in Hanover, is that right, Norbert?
Okay.
Where are you sitting, Norbert?
In fact, I'm also sitting in Rinteln, so it's, it's very close to Linda, but my view isn't so nice. And the weather outside is not so nice as we. They predicted snow this evening and -5 degrees, so it's similar to Värmland, I think.
I'm not looking forward to my bike ride home tonight.
Yes.
But today we're going to hear about the the title I have on my sheet is Burgenbussen. That was pronounced like a Swede. How would you pronounce that in German?
Burgerbusse.
Burgenbussen, which I think, if my brain is still functioning correctly, is the people's bus.
People's bus. Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. Which is a project that was there was an element of a people's bus project at the beginning of Stronger Combined, and then we transitioned to the city of Rinteln transitioned to a cargo bike. But my understanding from speaking with you is that this is not an uncommon type of innovation in this region.
No, that's clear. Alone in the county of Schaumburg, where Rinteln is one of the major cities, there are some 20 Burgerbusse driving, and all over Germany there are 350 of them. I hope you see my first slide right now.
We see your PowerPoint, beginning, but we don't. It's not in presentation mode. But I will hand over the presentation to you, and we're excited to hear about the people's buses.
Okay, so now you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
looks good.
Okay, so this is the first slide. The first I have to tell you is that at the beginning we were at bus traffic. We were also at Burgerbus traffic, and we wanted to make a connection to the new hospital we have in the county, but then everything went a little bit different, and so the last year or the last 1.5 years of the project, I was working with the Burgerbussen in, let's say, Germany and other countries, being in this project, being in the North Sea region. But also, if there are, only for the last weeks of the project, if there is anyone who said, hey, we have a similar thing in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in Norway, in Belgium, okay, I have enough from Germany, but I only have a few ones out of the other project countries. So feel free to contact anyone. I think they all know me or can bring this information to you, and you will find your city, your region, and we will all have a better overview about that. So what is Burgerbusse? It is my theme in this project. It's a best practice, some 350 routes, as I told you, alone in Germany. And there are some other themes I made before, as I said, advanced bus lines in Rinteln to the hospital, and connection to a vacation park near Rinteln. Then the reuse of an old school at Kollegienplatz in Rinteln that failed finally because for a year or so we had to use this old empty school as a vaccination center. That's everything that happened, that went across our project. But finally, an autonomous bus line only as a project between the school centers right now that remains unfinished, but maybe in a year or two it will be existing. Now, what is a people bus? You see, I took the same words. It is a people bus, not only for people, but also made by people. This is an adding of the public transport network in rural areas between all the small cities and villages, often with a destination that says central bus station in the city, in the larger city, or even a train station to get the rural traffic, the rural passengers, more to the centers around. It has special schemes, operational as well as infrastructural, and also in the field of suitable carriers. You see here in the picture, it will be more smaller buses, starting with 8-seaters, but that depends on what people are allowed to drive these kinds of buses. And that is maybe different from country to country. In some countries, they have to have a special education to drive passengers. In others, this is free up to 7 or 8 people sitting in the bus. So this will all be my best practice thing I established right now, and you will have a lot of information through this project to have these kinds of people buses running. The target group, as I said, the capacity and the range are very important factors. There are mostly mobility disabled people who don't have a car, living in rural areas, and sometimes they go for certain goals. So there are buses going to the supermarket nearby to get some food, some devices or so, and bring it back home. A lot of people, a lot of passengers are women. Why that? That is very easy, because their husbands normally drove them by car to the next supermarket or the doctor or anything else. But then sooner or later, this husband, it may also be elsewhere, this husband is also mobility disabled, and their wives start to say, hey, how can I go to the supermarket? So all in all, it is somewhere between the capacity of a taxi and what we call bully, so this Volkswagen, a small transporter. We have something between 4 or 5-seaters to 8-seaters. We also have taxis, but shared taxis, what is not so very common. So, but you can use a taxi to be a people bus. And sometimes even the operation is by the taxi center. Normally we have a drive up to 20 kilometers, up to 30 minutes, mostly on-demand buses, and also often without defined stops. That is something very new, I think, and very unusual, because if you have no defined stops, you don't know where to stop. So you have to get the information as this bus driver. You have to get the information, where can I pick up this customer? What is easier year by year due to social media and so, but the former years that wasn't so very good. Then the main thing is the driver. The driver of such bus is amazing, because 70 to 80% of the operational cost is the driver. So you can say, if you use a large bus or a smaller bus or anything else, that doesn't make so much effect. The effect really is do you have to pay your driver? So the most of these people buses are working with volunteer drivers, mostly retired people, and are organized as associations. In Germany, we have these associations that don't have to pay a lot of taxes, so it is very common to use it on that operational way. So some of these rural taxi companies are filling even their time gaps with special offers. We have a 50% taxi, a senior taxi, and something like that. And they run under the name of people buses also. The kind of buses is also very important. As you saw on the picture before, they are plastered by all company things, and the companies are paying some small money to have their name on the bus and see, there is this and that kind of company being here in our region and working for us. So this is another thing that is the Dorfbully, what is the village bus that is organized by the church on Sunday to get the people to church and back. But all the other days, it is free and you can use it as a people bus. Other buses, autonomous buses, we also started with are, you've seen it in the first picture, are more in the large cities. We have this Voya approach in Hamburg and in Hanover, and some similar things you can see in the last slides, because you need some dynamic navigation, you need a timetable, you need a cell phone in order to fulfill your system capacities. The information exchange with passengers is, on one hand, in small people buses, is via cell phone and nothing else, and the driver has to write down what the next passenger will be. Some are more structured, and there are even networks they use. You have a bus that is a little more capacity in it, and others have really communication with centers, and we use bus companies as well as other taxi centers and so. And what make us a little better in dealing with these buses is that the German legislation transferred their status from experimental, so only in certain cases, to a very good additive factor for public transport some 5 years ago, and that made a large addition to this thing. The best practice examples so far, here are only some things. One is Kevelaar, which is near the Dutch border. You see there are even 4 Burgerbussen, people buses, from all the small villages to the center village, the center city they have there. Another one is in Schaumburg. A third one is in Lindau, which is at the Lake Constance. And that is the thing I mentioned. This is the first bus that is driverless. So in the future, there will be a variety of public transport systems, not only in cities, but also in rural areas. And we can say that in cities, it's going more and more to the driverless area. And in rural areas, they are driving with volunteer drivers. And this technical approach will go, as I said, more and more to driverless systems in rural areas as well as in cities. And maybe it will be added for more private approaches, so anyone can sell seats for a connection. You drive anyway, like car sharing agencies. And I think there is a large field to fill this rural gap for some kind of public or semi-public transportation. So this is for the future. This is the people's bus in Lindau at the Lake Constance, which is a E in Germany. The last letter E means it is an electro bus, and it's also driverless. You may see that there is no details, so you can give me certain hints for that. So that's all.
Thank you so much, Norbert.
Yeah.
Interesting as always. I have just a couple of questions. The first is this common in all German regions or just in your region? Or
No, that is my examples were from. There's even one example from Sylt, from the northernmost island. They have driver or passenger benches where you can lift up a sign that says, I want to go northbound or southbound or anywhere else. The other one was from Lake Constance, what is all the way in the south. Kiruna is all the way to the west. And I forgot an example to the east. So it is very common everywhere.
Very, very well spread. Is there, would you say that there's one place that is kind of the origin of this idea, or that gets credit for being the first?
No, it's not. I would say, well, it's my county there, where Rinteln is one of the cities. We have a lot of them, and our economic ministry in Niedersachsen, in Hanover, is pushing them forward very much. But to say they were the first, it is a little bit too positive.
Okay. Have you driven a people's bus?
Yes.
You have?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
several times. Normally, I'm almost retired. Let's say it this way. So I'm preparing for this time.
Are you looking forward in your retirement? Do you plan on driving around? Is this a plan that you have?
As long as I can, why not? Yeah, it is. We are a rural area there, so it is an exciting thing to know other people and what they think and what they do.
I have one other question, and it seemed like toward the end of the presentation, it looked like there were some privately organized, maybe corporate sponsored, independent bus initiatives, especially with autonomous buses. Is this still a people's bus? Is this something that there really does seem to be kind of like there are people's buses, and then there are buses that are maybe not traditional public sector supported. But I wonder if does this still count as a people's bus if it's as a corporate sponsor?
Yeah, it is also counted as people's bus, but in the technical branch, we have, of course, this Moja approach is from Volkswagen or so. But they are the owner of these bullies, so they are very much in this theme. In other ways, the universities in Karlsruhe, in Munich or so, they are also working with that. And sometimes they have their campus, they have installed some of these buses instead of normal buses. If they have a large campus, they have a large transportation need. So they are testing everything. As you have seen it perhaps on these European and World ITS congresses, it's the same thing. Everyone is testing what will be the next generation.
Well, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
And take care, and I'll see you around in the transportation and innovation world.
Well, you will meet me. Yeah, okay.
Or not. I'll see you on the people's bus. I'll see you on a people's bus somewhere in Germany.
Yes. You can tell me time and date and where you are, and I'll catch you up.
All right, I'll remember.
Yeah.
Norbert, I'm stuck. Pick me up. No, just kidding. All right.
It needs a day or two to come to Gothenburg, but I'll do it if you want.
Okay, sounds good. I'll keep you in mind. Thanks again, Norbert. That is the final session. We've made it. We've come to the end of the first, the last, the uniquely special, the once in a lifetime, never ever again Stronger Combined Results Conference. If you are still online, if you are still paying attention, wow, thank you. And I really hope that you have learned a lot from today. I've certainly learned a lot from today. It's been a real pleasure seeing everyone's face in the same day and many people in the same room. We've had some very stimulating conversations. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we cannot show you our choreographed Stronger Combined song and dance. That will never happen because this was the first and last and completely unique Stronger Combined results conference. So that is lost in a black hole of time and space. I am very, very glad that we've had a chance to learn from our different living labs and experts today. And above all, we have learned that we are stronger combined.